Now, for more on this, we're now joined by Zwelinzima Vavi, who's the General Secretary of the South African Federation of Trade Unions, Saftu. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. Very good evening to you. Just your thoughts on what President Ramaphosa said there, that the mining industry is making great strides moving forward. Is that how you see it?
Well, certainly the current commodity boom is good news for South Africa, more so in the context where the country as a whole is trying to step out of the shadow of a coronavirus that devastated our economy, that decimated jobs, and that have created conditions of worsening poverty and inequalities. That we have a sector, a very important sector in the economy, that is fortunately seeing a massive boom in its prices is certainly something to talk about and to say, yeah, it is a good news. I'm going to come back to it's good news to who. And secondly, we are in the second month of a devastating war between Russia and Ukraine. And that have immediately created another second crisis. The prices of gas and the prices of other minerals have shot up. And in a manner that is, of course, driving the growth of and adding to the boom that we experienced quite earlier in the year as a result of the rise in the prices of coal and other minerals. But certainly a question have to be asked as to who really benefits from this boom at this particular moment in our country. And let's just go back to the previous booms. In the previous a boom of prices around 2004 under the then Thabo Mbeki administration. We saw him using that boom to expand provision of social services and to increase the levels of beneficiaries on all manner of government supports to the poor, and to, in particular, drive social expenditure to the point that by 2007, his administration was spending above 12% in real terms on social expenditure. It was good news because at least there was some benefit. There's some benefits of that of commodity boom being felt by ordinary people on the ground. Of course, we all know what happened in 2007 and 2008. The West's economic crisis visited our world, and South Africa was not spared, leading to the current crisis, where suddenly the whole framework, the whole architecture of development was changed and basically upside down. And we are, as a country, trying to navigate our way out of that crisis. And now, as we're trying to navigate out of that crisis, came the coronavirus, came the July uprisings 2021, and now we've just been hit by the other ecological crisis, which almost killed 500 people in Durban recently. So all of those things tend to work against each other. And you can just imagine if we didn't have this commodity pricing boom, we will be in a much more dire straits than we are already. So the president was absolutely correct to say that 11% increase growth in the mining industry has been absolutely very helpful generally in the economy as a whole. But then the question is, who are the beneficiaries? And we have to ask that question not only in the context of the over 12% expenditure growth under the Mbeki administration, but we have to look at it in the context where most, if not all, of the mining multinational corporations are listed and have shifted their headquarters elsewhere in Europe. Example, Anglo-American have entirely moved to London. So if we were to ask who will benefit in terms of the current boom, surely the shareholders who are based in London will be the major beneficiaries. BHP have moved or Glencore have moved into Switzerland. BHP have moved to Melbourne. And yes, there will be some black diamonds, as they call them. The people who have black people who have moved into the space, who are obviously getting into the space of being the major beneficiaries of the current boom. So you have to look again at the question, where does this boom place us in relation to the overall crisis, the four crises we are facing? The crisis of unemployment, which is getting worse. We're now hitting 46% or about 50% of black people, with now 8 out of the 9 provinces sitting with unemployment about 40%. Where does that take us in relation to poverty? Where does it take us in relation to inequalities? And our argument from Saftu will be that, unfortunately, government will not use the current price boom to the benefit of the men in the street. Look at the example as we speak. There's a strike at Sibanye. Workers are demanding a mere 1,000 increase, and the management says you won't get it. But at the same time, the management says our CEO, who is a major beneficiary of this price boom, will get a 300 million rands in 1 year. The question is, who would have sang more praises for the current price boom? Is it ordinary workers of Sibanye, or is it the CEO and the senior management of Sibanye and the shareholders that are elsewhere in Europe? The answer will be, it is not the workers. The relationship between black people and their mining deposit remains that they provide cheap labor, and the main beneficiaries of that mining activity remains a neo-colonial structure economy that sends all of these raw materials to Europe and increasingly to China for the benefit of their beneficiation and industrialization, not that of South Africa. That's our crisis.
So what ought to be done?
We've been arguing unsuccessfully for years now that the structure of the economy must change altogether. We've been arguing that we cannot sustain any further a neo-colonial structure where the main activity of the mining industry or of the economy as a whole is about extraction and then moving raw materials out of the economy. We've been arguing that we needed to stop financial cash outflows, because if you're losing between 300 and 400 billion rands, or 7% of the GDP, through illicit cash outflows, you can imagine that even with this current price boom, you're going to see that activity increasing instead of decreasing. The South African government, which is the call that Saftu is making, should be at least considering a windfall tax at this moment. Some kind of a solidarity tax to say, look guys, it's good times for you in the mining industry. But how are we going to ensure that at least we move the country away from the current 350 insult that is being given to our young people? 11 million of them stand up in the post offices, long queues, to desperately get that 350. Should we not be talking about increasing that into a 1,500 basic income grant to at least address the levels of poverty in the economy that constitute a ticking time bomb? And we've got to be insisting to say, whilst you are having this boom, we've got to force you to beneficiate. And if you don't beneficiate and build secondary industry, if you're not helping us to industrialize the economy again, we're going to punish you. We're not only going to bring in a windfall tax, but we're going to punish you by taxing you even at higher levels if you move the raw materials out of the economy unprocessed. So those are the things that we want to advocate and to appeal on the government once more. Don't just celebrate that the CEO is getting 300 million and all you are limited to speak to is that it is unsustainable that the mining industry can ignore the levels of poverty amongst its own workers that are producing that wealth and or around the communities around which these minings are situated. Surely there've got to be an integrated approach. We're not even calling for anything, because the call that we normally make is that these mines should have long been transferred to the ownership of the people as a whole, and that the people of Limpopo Northwest, where these deposits are situated, should not be the face of poverty when they have so much wealth beneath their soil. But the government is even far away. They won't even aggressively drive the issue of a mining company owned by the state to ensure that it can use that as a leverage to ensure that is free education and that is introduction of the national health insurance. We're not even talking about that radical program, which is the Saftu demands, but we're now saying to the government, can you at least introduce a windfall tax? Can you stop the illicit cash outflows? Can you impose a tax on all of the companies that move raw materials out of this economy? Can you force them to beneficiate and give them rewards? All of those that are helping you to build secondary industries in this economy to drive job creation in South Africa instead of drive job creation in China and Europe.
All right, talking about jobs, I mean, the mining sector really is about labor and their contribution. And I just wonder, when I look at the theme of the African Mining Indaba, evolution of African mining, investing in the energy transition, ESG, environment, sustainability, governments, and the economies, do you think that there's enough conversation about workers and labor, especially when we look at the future? I mean, we're starting to hear about things like automation becoming more and more commonplace, and that will have a major effect on workers. Do you think there's enough of those conversations happening at Indabas like this?
I don't think so. Unfortunately, those are nice slogans that they are throwing in order to attract some form of publicity that is positive to their sector. Here is what we are facing as the economy of South Africa. We are facing a climate change calamity that have killed in the main women, black people, working class communities, that have destroyed and devastated the infrastructure that doesn't exist, because black people find themselves in these hills because they don't have access to land. They are forced into those hills around Durban because they cannot go anywhere else. The best land has been taken by the gated communities and by the golf estates and all of that. And this mining industry, Indaba, in my view, should be talking about how South Africa can move faster away from the fossils and from the fossils into sustainable renewables. How do we reposition Eskom to drive the renewables instead of pushing for its privatization? And how do we ensure that this Indaba is a platform that can be used to launch a true integrated program that will involve workers and communities in driving us away from the fossils into the renewables driven by ESCOM. We want to emphasize. In my view, or in the view of Saftu, this should be the narrative. This should be the debate that they are having, and in response, in particular, to the calamity that we are seeing unfolding each and every year now. We are being visited by the rain bombs in Durban, moving towards south of Durban into the Eastern Cape, having devastated Beira in Mozambique, Zimbabwe, and Zambia, Limpopo. And South Africa is going to not to be sustainable if we are not taking drastic action now to move us into a sustainable future that is going to be about building renewables, not in a manner that will throw coal mine workers into the streets and give them nothing in return, but in a manner that is going to ensure that as we move away from the fossils, we are moving into a space that is under public ownership and by ESCOM, and where communities and workers will have their future guaranteed, in particular the communities of Mpumalanga and Limpopo and Northwest, that we can move away from the fossils into the renewables. And that is not just a pipe dream, that's something that is practically possible. There is no such a debate in South Africa. We are having a contradiction where
unfortunately we've run out of time, as you can imagine, with these programs. I wish we could have a little bit more, but thanks so much for joining us this evening. I think by and large a lot of your points have come through quite strongly. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you. All right.